The longer California counts ballots, the worse Republican candidates fare. Is this no big deal or evidence of fraud? Welcome to Sharpening Arrows, where we train teens to think biblically about life and politics. I'm your host, Victor Jakes. Now, this is a bit of a unique podcast. I encourage you, parents, to listen to this podcast with your teens or preteens. We are going to talk openly about the best arguments for the ideas of the political left and for non-Christians. We don't have to be afraid of those arguments. We don't have to pretend that there's no appeal to those arguments. But what we must do is we must walk alongside our teens and preteens and help them think through these arguments, show them where the flaws are, and prepare them with the truth. This is how we sharpen our arrows. Teens, if you've ever wanted to debate like Charlie Kirk did or ask questions like Allie Beth Stuckey, you simply must understand your opponent's best argument, and that's what we're going to do here. Now, if you want to watch, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/@sharpening-arrows, youtube.com/@sharpening-arrows. Well, I spent most of last week hiking with one of my sons, a friend from college, and his son. It was a wonderful trip. I saw a lot of the beauty that's in God's creations. It's incredible what God has made. And last Wednesday, we were in the line for the shuttle at Zion National Park over in Utah. And my friend looks on his phone at the results of LA's mayoral election. And we both were very excited that Spencer Pratt was in second place, and he seemed poised to advance to the general election. But as of today, he's almost certain to finish third. What happened? All right, let's have a pause point. That's another unique thing about this podcast. Parents, I encourage you to actually stop the podcast and to talk about these questions with your kids. So here's the question. How soon after the polls close should election results be known? All right, we're just gonna have that one there. We're gonna leave that one, and we'll come back to it in a little bit. All right, as always, when there is a news story like this, we need to know what's actually happening. Getting the details right is an essential part of making a good argument, of knowing what the truth is, of being able to discern what direction to go. So it starts with this. California has a weird primary system. In most states, the party, so if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, there's some mechanism for the party to come together and decide who's going to be the candidate in the general election. That's the election in November for this party, for the Democrats, for the Republicans. In some cases, you'll have a third party like the Libertarian Party or the Green Party. Not in California. In California, everyone runs on the primary ballot. Anyone wanting to be governor, anyone wanting to be LA mayor, anyone wanting to run for a certain seat in Congress runs on one ballot, and the top two vote getters advance. Okay, so what was happening in LA is it was widely expected that the current mayor, Karen Bass, was going to receive the most votes, but she wasn't going to receive 50%, which would mean there would be a general election in November. And the question was going to be, could Spencer Pratt, this kind of former reality TV star who lost his home in the Palisades fire, who is new to politics and basically ran as someone who wanted to clean up LA, and his campaign kind of took fire with really just incredible marketing and viral videos. And, polls had shown him doing well and likely to come in second place. Could he achieve second place, or would a city councilwoman named Nithya Raman, who's hard left, Karen Bass is almost a communist, and somehow Raman is running to her left, would she come in second place? All right. Well, on election night, Councilwoman Raman basically gives a concession speech. But, gets up and is very teary, and kind of the theme of the speech is we did our best and we're fighting for the children, and it was widely viewed as a concession speech. Oh, but wait. Almost a week after the election, she has pulled ahead of reality TV star Spencer Pratt in the Los Angeles mayoral primary. It happened on Sunday, so 5 days after the polls closed, as a surge in the vote count signaled a potential shift in the race for second place. This is according to the New York Times. 5 days after the election deadline, it remained officially undetermined who will face Mayor Karen Bass, the incumbent, in the November contest to decide who will lead the nation's second most populous city. And as I record this, it is widely expected that Rahman will be that person in second place based on how the returns are coming in. And the New York Times explains this shift by saying the late returns have trended heavily in favor of the liberals, who make up an overwhelming majority of the city's electorate. Spencer Pratt, for his part, posted on social media a net swing of more than 43,000 votes since Tuesday. 43,000, huh? Where have I seen that number before? Probably nothing. And attached to his post on X was an article citing that there were 43,699 homeless in the city of LA. And this turnaround, this shift, this change has led to accusations and rumblings of voter fraud, most notably from President Trump. On Sunday, he wrote on Truth Social, "Has anybody been watching the crooked election going on in California? 2 great Republican candidates are being cheated, and so is America, which, if the Democrats are able to fulfill their mission, great trouble and consternation will follow. Watch this election closely." The second candidate there he's referring to is in the governor's race. All right, so let's start, as we always do in this podcast, with arguments for the wrong side. And here is the first response you will hear from people who are defending what's happening in California as legitimate. Well, this is how the system is supposed to work. You see, California mails a ballot to every registered voter, and those ballots can be counted if postmarked by Election Day and received within 7 days. This is from the California Secretary of State's website. Okay, so this is the official guidance for the state of California. The election results are never final until the Secretary of State has compiled the official statewide results after all county election officials have reported their official canvass of the votes. By law, California county election officials have 30 days, also known as the canvass period. Okay, so there's no official results until 30 days. Continuing, during the canvass period, counties must count and report on all ballots, with some exceptions, by the 13th day after the election. Counties that aren't going to do this can file an extension listing the reason for their extension. County election officials must finalize their official results to the Secretary of State by 30 days after the election. And then 38 days after the election, the Secretary of State will certify the results. So we are looking at mid-July to get California's final results. But that's the process. That's the law. Election officials are supposed to follow the law, right? You wouldn't want them to break the law. So delays aren't anything to worry about. They're just part of the process. All right, let's have a pause point. Which of the great 8 questions would you use in response to this argument? And as a reminder, the great 8 questions are the questions we put in our mental toolbox that help us examine arguments. Question 1, what happens next? Question 2, has this been tried before? Question 3, is there a principle involved? Question 4, what are the trade-offs? Question 5, what do you mean by that? Question 6, is this an appeal to emotion or logic? Question 7, am I focused on the speaker or the argument? And question 8, what does the Bible say? Okay, as a reminder, there are lots of ways to attack arguments, so just because I don't choose the question you did does not mean you are wrong. But here's how I would respond to this argument. Let's look at question 2. Has this been tried before? And in this case, we're going to ask, is it possible to count votes quickly in a large state? Because sometimes also in this argument will be the idea that, well, California is very big. There are a lot of counting that's going on, and so they need all this time to be able to report results. So we can look around and say, is there another large state in the country where results are reported more quickly? All right, in 2024, in Florida, Florida reported 99% of its results within hours of the polls closing. So, not the day after the election, not the week after the election, the night of the election. 99% of the results were in Florida. Now, Florida doesn't mail ballots to every voter like California does, but it does have a large number of mail ballots. And yet, 99% of the results are reported on election night. Now, there are some reasons for this. The reasons are that the law is different in Florida. One big difference is that mail ballots must be returned by election day, so there's no ballots trickling in after the election. Florida also counts mail ballots before election day. It doesn't release the results, but it does count them, which allows the mail ballots received before election day to be known very quickly after the polls closed. Florida has made speed a priority, and it has done that without restricting access to the ballot box. All right, so let's ask a second question here. Question 3, is there a principle involved? Okay, so the argument is, well, California's just following the law, and my response would be, election results should be known on election night. Surprise twists are great in movies and books, but not in election counting. It breeds distrust to have one candidate winning for 5 days and then suddenly losing a week after the election. All right, let's have a pause point. Who do you think said this? In the face of these challenges, we must continue building confidence in our elections and ensure not only that every vote is counted, but that every vote is trusted. We must acknowledge that the longer the vote counting takes, the more mis and disinformation spreads. That means we must do all we can to tabulate votes quickly and accurately. Time is of the essence in preventing election lies from taking hold. Who said this? Who is making this claim that we must have speed in election counting? Vice President J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Ron DeSantis in Florida, President Donald Trump? No, not at all. This comes from Governor Gavin Newsom, who runs California. Now, obviously, his take on this is that we have to count quickly to stop these crazy Republicans from spreading mis and disinformation. But the point is still there, right? Like even the left is saying, we actually should know election results a whole lot sooner. And so this principle is agreed on, obviously on the right, but many people on the left will even admit it. So why isn't California doing it? All right, before we get into that, let me tell you about Mama Bear Prayers, a podcast for moms who are knee-deep in dishes and training their teens. Whether you are in the carpool lane or the coffee line, host Charity Rios wants to come alongside you and help you grow deeper in your relationship with Jesus. Now, as every parent knows, raising kids is a roller coaster ride. You ride moments of joy and plunge to moments of deepest concern. Combine this with how busy life is, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and even isolated. And as the mom of 4 very busy boys, Charity knows this firsthand. It's why Mama Bear Prayers exist, to support moms who are on the journey of raising kids. God works through prayer, so check out Mama Bear Prayers today. All right, so here we get into the second argument. We've established that there is a principle that election results should be known on election night. California is not doing that. That shouldn't be acceptable. But then the next argument you'll get from the left is, okay, well, yeah, sure, the ballots should be in a little sooner, but just because Democrats surge in the ballots counted after election day, the election is accurate and secure. That's not proof of fraud. I mean, Spencer Pratt going from second place, strongly in second place, to third place. Well, we've seen reversals like this before. On election night in 2024, Republican incumbent Representative Michelle Steele, she was ahead on election night, but days later, the Democrat in that race, Derek Tran, won the seat. Not just days later, 3 weeks later, 22 days after the election. Here in Nevada, we've seen Republican Senate candidates in 2022 and 2024 leading on election night, only to lose as more ballots came in. And the reason this is because Democrats are more likely to use mail ballots. And that's the fault of Donald Trump. He trashed mail ballots during COVID. And so many Republicans have taken a cue from him, and they simply don't use the mail ballots. And so what this means is it means that you've got Republicans voting are more likely to vote on election day, while Democrats are more likely to use mail ballots. And those mail ballots that are turned in or come in after election day, therefore, are more likely to be Democrat. And so you shouldn't be surprised when Democrats surge in these late ballots. Anyone objecting to this is just a conspiracy theorist. You see, there's no proof of widespread voter fraud. All right, let's have a pause point as we respond to this argument. Did you question President Joe Biden's mental sharpness before his debate stage meltdown? Now, if you're a teen or a preteen, you may not remember this, but about 3 years ago, Republicans started noticing that, well, even a little before 3 years ago, but especially 3 years ago, Republicans started noting that President Joe Biden wasn't doing so well, that he just didn't appear very sharp. He would stumble. He was kept from the press. And if you remember, if you were someone who pointed that out, you were smeared as a conspiracy theorist. The propaganda press, who controls much of the news apparatus, dismissed these, said it was crazy. There were just other explanations for why he was just kind of wandering off a lot alone and lost. And then a debate happened between Joe Biden and Donald Trump on June 2024. And President Joe Biden's diminished mental state was so obvious that the Democrats booted him off the ticket. Well, they couldn't do it directly because they had the delegates, but basically pressured him into resigning and then selected Kamala Harris as their nominee without a single voter choosing her. Okay, how did Republicans know this? How did conservatives know this? How did they know that Joe Biden had lost his mental sharpness before it was common knowledge, before everyone admitted it? Because they saw the signs. They saw all these pieces of evidence, all these clues, as it were, and they said, what best explains all these things? Well, President Joe Biden is aging, and his age has caught up with him. And that's how they could identify what was happening, because they looked at the fact pattern. All right, so here's the facts. California doesn't require voter ID. You don't have to prove who you are in order to vote. California sends mail ballots to every single active registered voter, which means there are ballots floating around. Okay, I want to make a really clear distinction here. Okay, so what we used to have would be voting by mail, and that's what would happen, or absentee ballots. And these terms kind of get used interchangeably, but they actually are referring to two different things. So what used to happen is that someone could say they could fill an online form or a physical form. They could go to the election department or request from the election department a mail ballot. That they would say, hey, I'm going to be gone. Hey, it would be more convenient for me. Please send me a ballot. Okay. Now there's a check in that system because someone has to actually go and ask for the ballot. And so if someone asks for it, it's much more likely to go to the person who is a registered voter. This is from a post on X from Idaho Girl. She's talking about the recent election in California. They even send ballots to Idahoans. I moved my elderly father out of Hayward in October 2020. I put in a COA with the post office, change of address, surrendered his California driver's license, and got an Idaho one. They have sent ballots to him every year since. He died earlier this year. His bank account was frozen. We got letters from Social Security, OPM, and the VA saying he died, and the benefits are ending all within a week. Of course, he still got a ballot and will get one in November. They are relentless. And she posted a picture of the ballot envelope that she got sent. So you can see here the danger in mailing ballots to everyone is that you are mailing ballots to, in this case, someone who's no longer alive, doesn't even live in the state. But think about an apartment complex. People move in and out of apartment complexes all the time. If you keep people on the voter rolls for 2 or 4 years, which is pretty standard, you're sending ballots to people who no longer are there. Sometimes people who are homeless can get registered at not where they live because they're homeless, but maybe at a nonprofit organization. And so this nonprofit organization can be the recipient of all sorts of ballots. Now, why would that be problematic? Because there's no way in California to guarantee, to assure that the person who sends in that ballot is actually that person. The supposed security measure is called signature verification, but there's a major problem with that. For one, signatures change over time. They change depending on how much of a rush you are in. They change depending on the surface that you are writing in. And yet California says, oh, actually, no, this is the security measure to ensure that someone actually sent in the ballot. But even this security measure has a loophole because what they will say on the ballot is if someone can't sign their name, then they have a spot for a witness to sign it. And how do we know who the witness is? Oh, no, we don't. This is another woman on Twitter, Jennifer Callahan. She writes that her wildest takeaways from my time at the ballot processing center today: signatures only need to be 40% accurate. This is the setting the machines were set at for LA County. If you are unable to sign, you can make a mark, like a dot or a slash, instead of signing. A witness then signs. I asked them how they verify these signatures. Turns out they simply don't. Well, you must check the witness signatures, right? Quote, no, we don't. End quote. So there is no guarantee that all of these ballots, all of these millions of ballots that are being sent out, that they are being returned by the person who actually is the name is on that ballot. And I actually have tested this here in Nevada. I've run a couple of tests where I would have people that I know, and I would use just my normal signature, and I wrote their name, and then they copied, instead of writing their normal signature, they copied my version of their signature on their ballots. And when I sent that in here in the Las Vegas area into Clark County, the first time I did it, 8 of the 9 signatures went through. The acceptance rate was a little less the second time. I want to say it was around 55%. But you simply can't guarantee. We cannot know. You can have no confidence that the mail ballots that are being returned are actually being filled out by the person on the ballot. All right, another problem. You can register to vote by simply attesting you are eligible. Now, you're supposed to have a driver's license or social security number. But if you just say, actually, no, I don't have those, they will still register you to vote. Oh, yeah, and then they will send you a ballot. All right, then we can look at unusual vote dumps. This is from Homan David Hamadi on X. Ramon's, this is, remember, the woman who was in third place who surged into second place. Ramon's late mail-in ballot surge was fueled in large part by ballots from Skid Row. Tens of thousands of homeless whose ballots are sent to central addresses, not the sidewalk, and can be filled out or returned by someone else. Suspicious. This is Matt Van Swol on X. And he has a graph here showing the vote totals, and there is a huge disproportionate jump in Ramon's total, in her total in one of these vote dumps. And he points out that a third place candidate receiving more mail-in ballots than the first place candidate in the same primary. That's suspicious. So here's the argument that the left would say, well, late ballots lean Democrat. But here we don't just have late ballots leaning Democrat. We have late ballots leaning towards the Democrat who needs the vote, not the Democrat who's in first place. Let's have another pause point. Do people have an incentive to commit fraud? Yes, of course they do. There is much money and much power connected to those who win elections. Billions of dollars are spent on elections, at least presidential elections, or you're looking at the California governor's race, hundreds of millions of dollars. This LA mayor's race, millions of dollars. There is intense pressure to cheat, which is why the system should be secure. And the counter that you will hear here from the left is, well, this isn't proof of widespread voting fraud. Okay, here's what we have to understand, and should be so blindingly obvious that it doesn't need to be said, but I will say it. If the system is set up for people to cheat, and people cheat, they are not going to admit it. This isn't a murder mystery where the villain ends the play by bragging about how he got away with it. If you have successfully committed significant voter fraud, you have a massive incentive not to talk about it. One, you don't want to go to jail. But two, you're going to want to cheat again. And so this idea that, oh, because there's no widespread proof of voter fraud, everything is all hunky-dory, is completely nuts. All right, final pause point. Is this definitive proof that fraud happened? One of the hikes at Zion National Park is called Angel's Landing. You hike up about 1,000 feet, and then you go out to this outcropping, this huge cliff that overlooks Zion National Park. Just an incredible view. Now, to get there, though, it's a little bit dangerous. People have died on this hike. And one of the toughest sections is you walk a section, and there's chains there. It's not slick, at least if you don't go when it's raining or snowy. But if you walk a couple feet to the left, you're going to fall 1,000 feet to your death. If you walk a couple feet to your right, you're going to fall 1,000 feet to your right. And so one of the things that you have to do on that hike is you can't go to the left or the right. You have to stay on the straight and narrow. And here's the temptation for us conservatives. We can obviously see on the left that there is significant weaknesses in California's whole process. It is ripe for fraud. We know that people have an incentive for fraud. We can see things that look extremely fraudulent. And so we don't want to go to the left and say, oh, there's no fraud, there's no fraud. Of course, or there's no way people could commit fraud. Why would you even be suspicious of this? We don't want to go too far to the left. But the danger is that we go too far to the right and say, this is definitive evidence of cheating. Now look, I think the circumstantial evidence is all there. We've just gone through it. We've just laid it out. But we do have to acknowledge that we don't have the smoking gun. We can see all the pieces. We can see all the pieces that led us to conclude that Joe Biden's mental stability had declined, but we don't have the debate stage performance. So it's a bit unsatisfying. I'll be honest. It is a bit unsatisfying. So the conclusion that we have to be left with is there isn't definitive proof of fraud in California, but we know there's motive, means, and opportunity to do so. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube and share it with your friends. Be courageous like Charlie, stay sharp, and give God the glory. I'll see you next time.